All right, strap yourselves in, because we are going deep on the story of Rugby League today.
Ooh, I like that, a deep dive.
Yeah, we've got some awesome source material here, and it goes all the way from those early days, a small group of clubs breaking away to becoming this worldwide phenomenon.
Yeah.
It's quite a story.
It is, and it's a story of, a sport that really challenged the establishment.
Oh, yeah.
And came from a real sense of, I guess, social justice in a way, and gave working-class players a voice.
Yeah, you don't always think about sports, especially back then, coming from that kind of place.
Right.
But in this case, it really seems like it did.
Well, I mean, when you think about it, August 29th, 1895.
Okay.
That's when it all began. 22 clubs in northern England, they said, right, we're breaking away from Rugby Union.
Wow.
We're forming our own league, the Northern Rugby Football Union.
The NRFU.
The NRFU, that's right.
So that's literally day one of Rugby League.
That's it. That's the birth.
And they were driven by this idea that working class players should be able to get paid.
Right. Absolutely. Because Rugby Union back then, it was all amateur.
Right.
You couldn't earn a living from it.
Which, I mean, looking back now, it seems kind of crazy.
It does, doesn't it?
You've got these guys who are clearly talented athletes putting in the work, but they can't make a living from it.
No. And so for a lot of working class players,
Yeah.
that meant they couldn't even participate.
Right. They couldn't afford to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because they had to work. They had to put food on the table.
Right. Right.
So Rugby League, it was like a breath of fresh air for them.
Yeah. And it really shook things up, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Because you've got this established order, this Rugby Union that's been around for who knows how long.
Yeah.
And suddenly you've got these guys, these rebels, saying, no, we're going to do things differently.
Yeah. And it wasn't just about the money either. They actually changed the rules of the game.
Interesting. How so?
Well, for one thing, they reduced the number of players
Okay.
from 15 down to 13.
That would make the game faster, right?
Exactly. More space on the field, more opportunities for, exciting attacking play.
And I've heard about this thing called the play the ball.
Ah, yes, the play the ball.
That sounds unique to Rugby League.
It is, yeah.
What is that all about?
So imagine this. A player gets tackled. They have to get back to their feet, roll the ball back between their legs with their foot, and then the game keeps going.
So no big pileups like in Rugby Union?
No rucks or mauls, just pure action.
Wow, so they really were trying to create something different, something faster, more dynamic.
Absolutely, and I think that really appealed to, the working class audiences that Rugby League was attracting.
Yeah, they wanted to see some action.
Right, it was entertainment, it was a spectacle.
So they're gaining traction, they're making changes, and they're building a following. But, the Rugby Union establishment, they're not just going to sit back and watch this happen.
Oh, no, they did not take it lying down.
I bet. What kind of pushback did they get?
Well, first off, they banned any player who switched to Rugby League.
Seriously?
Yeah, a lifetime ban from Rugby Union.
Wow, so these guys were really making a choice, a tough choice.
They were, yeah.
I mean, that's their livelihood.
Exactly.
But it's also their passion, the sport they grew up with. So it's a huge decision.
It is, yeah, and it really shows how much Rugby League was shaking things up.
And it wasn't just the players, right?
No, they also tried to starve Rugby League clubs of resources.
Okay.
Denying them access to stadiums, training facilities, that kind of thing.
So really trying to make it as difficult as possible for them to operate.
Exactly. And in some cases, it even got political.
Really?
Yeah, in France, during World War II,
Okay.
the Vichy government actually banned Rugby League outright.
Wow. That's intense.
It was, yeah, they seized all their assets, handed them over to Rugby Union.
So they were really trying to crush them.
It seems that way, yeah.
And all this because they wanted to pay their players.
Well, it was more than that. It was about challenging the whole notion of amateurism in sport.
Right. So it was almost like a social movement as much as a sport.
Exactly. And that's what made it so powerful, so controversial.
So despite all this opposition, Rugby League, it manages to spread beyond England.
It does, yeah.
What was it about this sport that resonated with people in other countries?
Well, I think a lot of the same social and economic tensions that existed in England, they were present in other parts of the world too.
Okay.
Like Australia, for example.
Right. So you've got these talented players,
Yeah,
often from working class backgrounds, who are looking for an opportunity.
exactly. And Rugby League provided that.
And then there's this incredible story of the All Golds.
Oh, yes, the All Gold.
This New Zealand team that toured England and Australia in 1907. That's right. They really helped introduce the sport to a whole new audience.
They did. Yeah, they were pioneers.
And their tour of Australia, that was a pretty big deal, wasn't it?
It was huge.
It really sparked a lot of interest in the sport down under.
Yeah, I mean, within a year, they had their own professional rugby league competition up and running.
Wow, that's amazing, just from one tour.
It is. It really shows the power of, international sporting events.
To bring people together, to spread ideas.
Exactly, and to inspire new generations of players and fans.
And, of course, the All Golds also played a big part in establishing rugby league in their home country, New Zealand.
Oh, absolutely.
So in a very short space of time, rugby league had gone from those 22 clubs in northern England to a truly international sport.
It was spreading like wildfire.
But, all this growth, it didn't come without its challenges.
Right. I mean, starting any new venture, especially a sporting league, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, and they faced some serious financial struggles, didn't they?
They did, yeah.
We talked about the 1908 Kangaroo Tour earlier.
Oh, yeah.
That was a bit of a financial disaster, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. They underestimated the costs.
Oh.
And, let's just say they didn't make a profit.
Ouch, that must have hurt.
It did, yeah. But it's a good example of the kind of challenges they were facing.
Right, they were constantly trying to make ends meet.
Yeah, and it wasn't always easy.
So how did they manage to survive?
Well, they had to be resourceful, they had to be innovative, and they had to be willing to adapt.
And I'm guessing that's where television comes into play.
You got it.
We'll dive into that after a quick break.
You know, we were talking about those bans on players who switched over to Rugby League.
Yeah, that was pretty hardcore, wasn't it? Like a lifetime ban.
A lifetime ban from Rugby Union. Imagine that.
I mean, to give up the sport you grew up with, just for the chance to play professionally?
Yeah, it was a huge decision.
Really makes you think about how much it meant to them.
It does.
This wasn't just about the money. It was about something bigger.
Right. It was about opportunity. It was about challenging the status quo.
And the Rugby Union, they didn't stop there, did they?
Oh, no. They used every tactic they could think of.
Like what? What else did they do?
Well, think about it. They controlled the resources.
Right.
They owned the stadiums. They had the training facilities.
So what did they do? They basically said, okay, you want to play rugby league? Fine, but you can't use any of our stuff.
Pretty much, yeah. They made it as difficult as possible for rugby league clubs to get established.
Wow, they were really playing hardball.
They were, and it wasn't just about the practical stuff either.
Yeah.
Remember we talked about France during World War II? The Vichy government, they actually banned rugby league completely.
Seriously, I mean, that's just...
I know, right?
Wild.
They seized all their assets, gave them to Rugby Union.
It's hard to believe they went that far.
It shows how threatened they felt.
Right, like this was a real battle for the future of the sport.
It was, and for Rugby League, it was about survival as much as anything else.
And it's amazing how, even with all this going on, Rugby League still found a way to grow.
It's remarkable, isn't it?
They faced opposition, they faced financial struggles, but they never gave up.
They were incredibly resilient, and I think that's a big part of why they ultimately succeeded.
It's like they had this unwavering belief in what they were doing.
They did, and they knew they had something special.
And they were willing to fight for it.
Absolutely. And that fight, it wasn't just about the sport itself. It was about something bigger.
Right. It was about challenging those old ideas about amateurism in sport.
And about giving working class people a chance to participate, to excel.
It's incredible how much social and political history is wrapped up in this story.
It is, yeah.
You know, you start talking about a sport, and you end up talking about class struggles and government bans.
It's true. Rugby League's story, it's a reflection of the times.
Absolutely. And it shows how sport can be a powerful force for change.
It can, yeah. And in the case of Rugby League, that change, it wasn't always easy, but it was definitely necessary.
Now, we talked earlier about the financial side of things and how tough it was for Rugby League in those early years.
It was a constant struggle.
Like that 1908 Kangaroo Tour.
Oh, that was a tough one.
They lost a lot of money on that, didn't they?
Yeah, it was a financial disaster.
And that wasn't the only time they faced financial problems, was it?
No, it was a recurring theme, unfortunately.
I mean, building a new sporting league from scratch? It's got to be expensive.
It is. You've got to attract players, you've got to build stadiums, you've got to market the sport.
It's a huge undertaking.
It is. And for Rugby League, it was all the more difficult because they were constantly battling against the establishment.
Right. They didn't have the same kind of financial backing that Rugby Union had.
Exactly. So they had to be really creative, really resourceful.
And I'm guessing that's where television comes in.
Yeah, the arrival of television broadcasting, it was a game changer for Rugby League.
It must have been huge for them, right?
It was. For the first time, they had a reliable source of revenue.
So they could finally start to invest in the sport.
Exactly. They could pay their players better, they could build better facilities, they could reach a wider audience.
And it wasn't just about the money, was it?
No, television gave them exposure.
Right.
It brought the sport into people's homes.
So even people who had never seen a game before could suddenly become fans.
Exactly. And that was crucial for Rugby League's growth.
And it's interesting how the timing worked out. Like television came along just when Rugby League needed it most.
It's true. It was almost like fate intervened.
Like they had weathered the storm,
Mm-hmm.
and then this new opportunity presented itself.
It did. And they were smart enough to seize it.
They didn't just sit back and wait for things to happen. They were proactive.
Exactly. They recognized the potential of television, and they went after it.
It's a good lesson for any organization, any movement.
It is, yeah.
You have to be willing to adapt, to embrace new technologies, to be creative.
Absolutely. And Rugby League, they were masters of that.
And they were also really good at telling their story.
Oh, yeah. They knew they had a compelling narrative.
This story of resilience, of social mobility, of the underdog triumphing over adversity.
Mm-hmm. And they weren't afraid to embrace their working class roots.
Right, they made it a part of their identity.
And that resonated with people.
It did, because it was authentic, it was real.
It was, and it gave people something to believe in.
So it wasn't just about the sport itself, it was about the values it represented.
Exactly. And that's what made Rugby League so powerful, so enduring.
So they had the adaptability, they had the storytelling, and they had the smart business decisions.
It's a winning combination.
It is, and it's a formula for success that goes beyond sport.
Absolutely. It's something that any organization, any movement can learn from.
Now, we've talked a lot about the challenges that Rugby League faced,
Mm-hmm.
but they also had some major triumphs, didn't they?
Oh, yeah. Some incredible moments that really shaped the sport.
And we'll dive into those right after this. It's easy to get lost in those big stories, you know, the World Cups, the TV deals. But Rugby League, it's really a sport that's built on those local communities.
Oh, absolutely. It's always been a sport of the people.
Especially those working class communities.
Exactly. The miners, the factory workers, they were the heart and soul of Rugby League.
And they really embraced it, didn't they?
They did. It was more than just a game to them. It was a way of life.
It was a community.
Yeah, a sense of belonging, of shared identity.
And that really helped them through those tough early years, didn't it?
Oh, without a doubt.
You know, when they were facing all that opposition from the Rugby Union, when they were struggling financially.
It was the fans, the players, the people who built the sport from the ground up.
They kept it alive.
They did. They had this incredible belief in Rugby League.
It's really inspiring, isn't it?
It is. It shows what can be achieved when people come together, when they're passionate about something.
And they're willing to fight for it.
Exactly. And that's one of the biggest lessons we can learn from Rugby League's journey, I think.
So
That even when things are tough, even when you're facing seemingly impossible odds, you can still succeed if you have that belief, that determination.
And they were never afraid to challenge the status quo.
No, they were innovators. They were disruptors.
They were constantly trying new things, experimenting with rules, with formats, with business models.
Always looking for ways to improve the sport, to make it more exciting, more engaging.
They were always one step ahead.
They were. And they knew how to tell their story.
Oh, yeah. They had this amazing narrative, didn't they?
They did. This story of resilience, of social mobility, of the underdog coming out on top.
And they weren't afraid to own it, to embrace those working class roots.
It was part of their identity, and it made them relatable.
It did, and it gave people a reason to cheer for them, to believe in them.
Exactly. And they were smart about the business side of things, too.
Oh, yeah. They knew that to really succeed, they needed to secure those television deals.
Mm-hmm. That was a game changer for them.
It gave them the financial stability they needed to grow.
And the exposure to reach new audiences.
So it was a combination of factors, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. A mix of adaptability, storytelling, and smart business decisions.
And that's a recipe for success that goes way beyond sport.
It does. Any organization, any movement can learn from Rugby League's example.
Absolutely. And you know what? Their story is still being written.
It is. They're still facing challenges, still innovating, still evolving.
And I can't wait to see what the next chapter holds.
Me neither.
Well, I think it's safe to say we've gone pretty deep on Rugby League today.
We have. Yeah, it's been a fascinating journey.
From those humble beginnings in northern England to a global phenomenon.
It's a truly remarkable story.
And I hope our listener has enjoyed diving into it with us.
Me too.
We'll be back soon with another deep dive. But until then, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep that passion for sport alive.